Good evening, friends. My name is Bramhachari Aditya, and I'm speaking from Ananda Sangha, Pune. Thank you for joining this evening. And as you know, today is the first of a 3 week class series that we are doing on the subject of, you might say, understanding life after death. But as such a subject, the subject is such that it involves little bit understanding of what is death. First of all, how did Paramhans Yogananda ji, this is the image of Paramhans Yogananda ji. He's the author of the world renowned book Autobiography of a Yogi. And I mentioned that book because he wrote from personal experience of his own, the testimony of his guru, and many others. And I will be sharing some stories from that book. And at the same time, his own teachings are compiled in different places. He wrote on extensively on many subjects, but he also his teachings are compiled in this beautiful book, Karma and Reincarnation. And so anyway, today we will discuss a little bit that of that subject. There will be time towards the end for question answers, and then likewise the following week and the week after that we will cover the subjects. By the way, this will also be soon shared in Hindi by our other teachers and in some other regional languages. And I need not explain why this escalation, you might say, of the sharing on this topic is happening. It's simply because that is the need right now. We are facing on an unprecedented level illnesses due to COVID, death, and of course, it's something we never imagined would happen on this level. The masters keep reminding us that it's only a matter of time before we get tested on what is known as the final exam. Death is the final exam. And why not develop our understanding of it rather than as human nature is? I don't know if it's Yogananda used to say there are aspects to our nature. There's a superficial aspect, there's the personality, and then there is a deeper aspect when in moments of calmness, reflection, perhaps when we are just by ourselves, sometimes these deep thoughts may arise, but then in the hubbub of life we push them aside. We can no longer push them. Circumstances have compelled us to be by ourselves, you might say, see these things in the face, in the media. This morning we were with a batch of students who have taken some months of training. It was inspiring to see how they were coping with the challenges they are going through. They're mostly from North India. So they were very brave. They are keeping up their practices. On the other hand, almost one third of them had some or the other person in their family who was lost to COVID. So, anyway, naturally, this question comes: what is happening? What did Yogananda ji say? And I will be sharing some inspiring stories of how the masters are, you might say in your and my language, more busy than ever, dealing with this situation on your and my behalf, on our relatives' behalf, on everyone's behalf. So, this is what this event and these classes are about. And I would very much invite your question answers. If it is something that we have kept for class 2 or class 3, I will let you know. But please don't feel shy in bringing up your questions. And especially, I want to make this request of those who might be completely new to this subject or even to the teachings of Paramhans Yogananda ji. We are here to serve everybody, even though we belong to we follow the teachings of Yogananda, especially, and we share it through Ananda Sangha, the NGO which is committed to doing that. But these teachings ultimately are to bring clarity to everybody. So please join me for a brief prayer, friends, to God and Gurus, and we will chant and then just meditate for a minute before we get into this subject. Let's pray together. Divine Mother, great masters, beloved Guru Paramhans Yogananda ji, saints and sages of all religions, we humbly touch your feet. Great masters, in these times of need, help us feel your presence, your guidance close to us. For those who are suffering in body, mind, and may have left their body, be their support and guide, and console our own hearts through your teachings and our own deep inner experience that our friends and relatives are safe where they are, happy where they are. Above all, teach us how to live. And may that wisdom bring us closer to your consciousness till there is no separation between us and you. We are your children. Give us the understanding of where lies our true home. Om. I'd like to sing this chant called No Birth, No Death, written by Adi Shankaracharya. And this music and these words in the English translation were given by Paramhansa Yogananda ji. And the essence of this chant, friends, if you might be new to this, is that yes, we live in a body. We are born in a family. There is birth to the body, there is death to the body. But ultimately, from a higher view, which we all will see, there is no birth, there is no death for the soul. And the soul is ever free, it goes through a journey. Your and my responsibility is to affirm and experience that freedom which Swami Adi Shankaracharya is singing through these lines. No birth, no death, no caste have I. No birth, no death, no caste have I. Father, mother have I none. Father, mother have I none. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. Mind nor intellect nor ego feeling. Mind nor intellect nor ego feeling. Sky nor earth nor metals am I. Sky nor earth nor metals am I. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. No birth, no death, no caste have I. No birth, no death, no caste have I. Father, mother have I none. Father, mother have I none. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. Shivoham, Shivoham, मैं हूँ आत्मा शिवोहम. Shivoham, Shivoham, मैं हूँ आत्मा शिवोहम. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. Mind nor intellect nor ego feeling. Mind nor intellect nor ego feeling. Sky nor earth nor metals am I. Sky nor earth nor metals am I. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He. Blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He, blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He, blessed Spirit, I am He. I am He, I am He, blessed Spirit, I am He. Let's close our eyes just for a brief moment. For a minute in silence, let's meditate. Om. 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 Welcome again, friends. So, as I mentioned a little bit in the introduction, this in the beginning of the class, that today we will go into the subject. You might say the first aspect of it, of what is death, what happens when one leaves the physical body behind. uh, you might say a little bit prior to that is also the question that is coming to our mind: why are there illnesses or diseases of any kind in the first place? Now, on one level, we may not, it may be wishful thinking that they shouldn't exist, but listening from the masters, from Yogananda ji, what did God have in mind? Did he have these illnesses in mind? Did he have a painful death in mind? And things like that brings perspective to, perhaps you might say, the understanding that we may have little bit steered away from, we may have steered away from the, the way the teachings ought to be. And but then comes the question of what is karma in our life, in our own understanding. And if the law of karma, or cause and effect of ease and dis-ease, does exist, and if we may have erred from that, how can we bring ourselves back to a point? Just like there's an illness and we seek help from a doctor, there is a problem of any sort, let's say of engineering, or a musical instrument is not working, we go to the person who knows how to deal with that. And in this case, we would go back to the understanding of what is karma, how can we correct it, and ultimately, with that understanding, might we be carrying a lot of karma? As again, the masters say, by and large, most people do. It's very interesting that Yogananda ji, whenever he was asked this question, what is karma? And likewise with Swami Kriyananda ji, his direct disciple and our own teacher, he would say, it's too complex of a subject, which is to say that it just takes a lot of time. I remember somebody once telling Swami Kriyananda ji of a certain yoga master, very well known, and they say that, oh, they say that it's been a certain number of lives. I think it was in single digits. And Swami Kriyananda didn't make light of it, but it is his job, it was his job to keep the teachings as they are, not as you might say anybody would choose to define them. You and I would like to hear we don't have karma, or there is very little karma from the past. But he said, well, maybe they forgot to add a million to that number. in terms of the number of lifetimes we live. And when confusion does arise, friends, in religion or in true understanding of religion, we have to go back to the saints. We have to go back to the masters who are speaking not from their personal, you might say, authority, but that authority has been given to them by their personal experience of God. They are, you might say, as Yoganandaji would say of his guru, he said, "Thou art the spoken voice of silent God." That if there is a creator, if there is an intelligence which has set everything in motion, which our scientific understanding, at least today, tells us is staggering, just the vast expanse of the world, it makes you look up at the skies and wonder, where do our near and dear ones go? It often seems like they are at a distance. And because the world is so far, and maybe now the heavens have been pushed farther, because earlier we thought maybe they are just behind the cloud or something. But now, with the understanding of the end of physical universe is not known, we may sometimes even give up on our faith. I remember meeting somebody who had that thought. He unfortunately attempted suicide, a very brilliant young man, and fortunately survived that attempt. And later his father brought him for counseling, and I said, why you look like a wonderful, young man. He was in IIT Mumbai, very a brilliant place to be in, must have been a brilliant mind to be there. And he said, well, and I started telling him how wonderful creation is. Look around in the planet and look at the stars and moons and our galaxy. And little bit I stretched further, and I said, see, such we are part of such a wonderful creation. And he interrupted me. He says, that's precisely why I attempted to end my life. And he said, I was feeling sad and alone, and I, knowing from a scientific perspective how big things are, he said, I'm not even a dust mote in so such big is the physical creation. How does it matter if I exist or not? That the mind, can be like this two-edged sword. So we may not know, and we may choose not to know, or sometimes when we know half of the way things are. And in such confusion, again, with all due respect, we don't turn to IIT, and for that matter, again, with due respect to doctors, we have to turn to the spiritual doctors. I remember also many years ago in Delhi, I was seeing a very reputed doctor at the request of a family member who was concerned of my sanity. And they said, just see a good psychiatrist once. And you're talking of life, death, incarnation, and things like that. And, please, let's be normal over here. To make them happy, I said, okay, I'll see whoever you choose. And I was brought in front of a doctor, a psychiatrist. And he said, so, what is it? Your parents say you've changed after reading something. I said, no, I've been having, a little feeling of my heart, you might say, expand. I've been serviceful as far as I can look back in childhood. As a doctor, I've tried to help people. I said, recently I read a book, Autobiography of a Yogi. It came to my understanding from there that we are part of a larger reality. And my service now extends, I said, I want to extend it to the spiritual realm. And he said, oh, I've read that book. And so I was very happy. I said, so you would understand. I said, I want to become a saint. And he said, well, wouldn't you agree that all doctors are saints already, Aditya? I said, no, sir. I said, many of them are very saintly, perhaps. Quite a few might be even saints. I said, it means a lot to be a saint. I mentioned this story, friends, because we live in times where it's easy to put a cap like this well known spiritual master did, that, oh, yes, we live a certain number of lifetimes. But if it is much more than what you and I know, only after we know, Yogananda used to say, awareness precedes control. Once we know, to some degree, at least in our soul, knowledge and feeling, intuition, then we can do something about it. Otherwise, it's like the dead leading the dead, or dead burying the dead, as Christ would say. So, anyway, we will deal with that subject. And finally, I would like to little bit touch on the theme of what is Kriya Yoga and how does it help us, because in the third chapter of this series we will go into soul release more closely. So let's listen to what master had to say over here when we are discussing what is death. Let's actually listen from him what it is not, because there's a misunderstanding right there. Yogananda ji says, and this is from Karma and Reincarnation. I'll put the link to these books and a few others in the chat section below. Death is not annihilation. Death is a state of passive, involuntary relaxation brought on by accident, disease, or sorrow. The forcible and permanent disconnection of life current from the body is popularly called death or complete annihilation of life. In reality, it is only a temporary state. It is not the end of things, but merely the transfer from the domain of changeable ugly matter to the realm of infinite joy and multicolored lights. Now, I share that because for us, we get information from the senses about our own body, what's happening. And yes, it is extremely painful to lose somebody who has passed away. In this pandemic, my own relative and many friends, close friends I have known, their own relatives, they have left their body. And who knows, maybe it would have happened. Sometimes it was due to COVID, in some other times it was not due to that. And in at Swami Kriyananda used to say, he said, this world is a little bit like a concentration camp. It's a very big one, he said. Hence, we don't see what is happening simultaneously everywhere. And he said, we go one by one. I'm not trying to make light of this subject, which is extremely painful, but trying to also mention that when death does come, we are seeing a surface reality of it, but then more things might be going on which we should try to understand. Mentioning of my one of my relatives who passed away, well, I couldn't go to the cremation. He was my mamaji, my oldest mamaji, and my mother, especially for the last 20 years after her father, their father passed away, she was very close to him since childhood, but he had kind of adopted the father of the family role and was leading it very well till suddenly we heard one morning he's left his body. Well, what do you do when you're in a lockdown, when you're wondering how he was in his final moments, and how could we console our relatives? How could I console my mom? And somebody asked me this question many months later that on one level you're serving, but you couldn't be of service to your parents, you see, in those difficult times. You couldn't go to the ceremony at the funeral and such. And the lady said, what do you think about that? And I gave her this reply, which fortunately my mom told me, not immediately, but only a few months ago when I went home. I and another friend was simply, just having evening tea, and my friend was consoling my mother. They were meeting after a long gap, and he said, Auntie, I heard of your brother's passing. We have been praying for him. I want you to know that he must be in a very good place. And much to our surprise, my mom said, yes, beta, I know that much I know. But still, one does miss, the physical presence of the relative. And then he said, how do you know, Auntie, that he's in a good place? And she said, Swami told me so, Swami Kriyananda ji. And my mom had met Swamiji, but not my mama. Not at all. I think he may not have even read any book of our path. And she said Swamiji came in her dream soon after my Mamaji's passing, and she was inconsolable. And he said, Kamal, that's her name. He said, Kamal, dekho kaun aaya hai? And because she knows Hindi, mostly, and he spoke to her in Hindi, and he just waved his hand like this, and in the house adjacent to ours, my mamaji was standing in that dream, and basically she and my mom spoke just like they would speak normally since childhood. And he gave her some details of where he was, why he left his body, and what happened. And then he had some little messages, for everybody. And finally he said, please let them all know I'm in a very good place and not to worry about me, and things like that. Now, when I came to know that story, friends, and it's a very deep and personal one, but I took my mom's permission to share this. I'm sharing this because many of us go through this so many times, and it may not happen as dramatically as this one, but there are many others I've heard in this pandemic which you might say are more startling. On one level, visions of people where their relatives came and said things which only they knew. But I share this because, coming back to that question, if you're feeling a sense of bereavement, if you're feeling a sense of helplessness, how can I help somebody? I'm not a doctor, I'm not out there as a frontline worker and things like that. Remember, there are things that happen on many parallel levels of existence. They happen on a physical plane where you and I are seeing the challenges and also the heroic things people are doing. But they also happen, Yogananda ji said, on astral, which is to say energy level, and causal level, thoughts level. And he says finally those all these three realities do come from consciousness, from God himself. He has become every single thing, call it thoughts, feelings, ego, your intelligence, your skill, your body, matter of all kinds. Yogananda ji said when he looked back at his own past one time, he said, I remembered all my incarnations way back to when I was a diamond. Those who were around him when he was relating that story were quite startled that he didn't speak of just another human life. He said it goes all the way back to the mineral stage. He says when God manifests himself, it comes on the mineral stage first. The soul is manifested there, which is why the scriptures say God sleeps in the rocks. And don't feel too bad if, because one time a monk asked Ramana Maharishi, I want to become a vegetarian. I want to become more spiritual. Should I become a vegetarian? He said, it's better if you can. It'll help your meditations. And this monk retorted somewhat surprisingly. He said, but even the plants are alive. They too might be feeling pain, sir. And Ramana Maharshi smiled. He said, my son, so is the stone on which you are sitting. That there is nothing which, in a spiritual sense, is dead. The stones are alive with consciousness. It's not an expressive one. The plants move a little bit more, and the monk was right. They do feel some pain, but it is their job to offer themselves for consumption to sustain life. When the soul moves from past the stone and the plant incarnation, it goes into many, many animal incarnations. And then Yogananda ji explained as a special creation of God. He said there is no link between the animal to the human incarnation. He said scientists keep looking for it. And he predicted, he said they will never find one because there is none. He says man was created as a special creation. And he said the soul finally finds its highest expression in the human form. Now, that is on one level quite clear also, because when we talk to our friends, relatives, those who we love, we enjoy, you might say, in a reciprocal form, a very high evolved expression of consciousness. It's much more than a pet, it's much more than our garden, it is certainly more than stones and rocks. It is a human thing which can empathize with you, which perhaps is in need and complaining and of something they're having. You're trying to resolve that for them. And I totally understand the pain when somebody might be taking their last few gasps and leaving. And when that happens, it is natural for us to feel that loss, or almost like people say, my world came crashing down, everything for me has ended. I have been in those moments as a doctor when I was the last person, where the patient was trying to speak something to me or saying something, or their eyes were it was like they look and they finally, that look is withdrawn. And it's like, if you're sensitive, that something very tangible has left. The body is right there, but that which you and I call life, which was animating that form, which is the love, which is the feelings, which was the words, which was the agony or the hope, all these qualities, the personality and everything, in a moment that it has left. Those things do not die. And that is where Yogananda ji said that The loss is understandable. He said, however, if we can calm ourselves, or as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the wise mourn neither for those who are dead nor for those who are alive, that if you and I can attain and retain that understanding, trust me, friends, we would be doing a service to others. Because again, service happens outside. Service also happens if you retain a certain thought, if you develop a certain understanding. It gives other people the power of our understanding, just like a teacher's experience lends that to the students. Similarly, our understanding of these teachings helps bring about a change of people's understanding sooner or later. So I also now want to cover this subject of karma, because if death has taken somebody from us, if it's going to sooner or later come to you and me, is it just a random event? Can it happen anytime to anyone? Or is there a certain time? What did Yogananda ji say about it? Well, first of all, he said that pain, painful death, and he said losing our faculties and senses in old age, he says, was not part of God's plan. If man would live in an ideal way, he says those things would not happen. Now, that is like picking it up from a very high point, and we have to also consider the times we live in, the yoga we are in, and I will not go in detail at all with that. But in a higher age, I think it's not hard for us to find stories like that in Indian mythology, which is actually, you might say, where history loses, a living passing chain that sometimes becomes mythology. So these things do happen. Once in a while, in a rare situation, one does hear stories, even in these times, where this is confirmed. Autobiography of a Yogi has many such stories, but let me simplify what I was trying to say. Yogananda ji confirmed what is often known in the ancient Indian teachings. There is this phrase, "Unhone pran tyag diye," which means that somebody surrendered the prana, the life force. What does that mean? Well, life force was not taken from them. It didn't forcibly leave. Even if that leaves, by the way, which is happening most of the time right now by, let's say, as I read, accident or some unnatural cause of death, there is much you and I can do to, you might say, complete that process, to pray, to, and that's something we will cover in the second class. How can we help that soul? It's just like, let's say somebody's lacking, they need a medicine but they don't have the money. Well, we could give them the money and then the treatment would be successful. In the same way, if somebody is lacking in some understanding or lacking in that control of prana, again, Yogananda ji said that we can develop that understanding. Of course, first of all, we need to develop it for ourselves while we are alive. But it can also, when we pray, when enough number of people pray for a soul, that soul is propelled forward in their journey in the energy or astral body, wherever they are, Yogananda ji said. And he also said, whenever they may have passed. So, as much as we are discussing this subject for these times, it is also equally true when, if somebody may have left their body long ago. But let's come back to that phrase, that how do you surrender the prana? Well, just like on any given day, let's say if a certain illness is coming upon you, let's say a regular flu in normal times, also nowadays when we think of flu, it's always COVID comes to mind. But even if a general flu is coming, even a little child will say in the morning, "I'm not feeling so energetic, mother. I'm having low energy today. I'm not feeling at ease," which is the state of disease, on physical, mental, emotional. If we are not in ease, we are in some or the other form of disease. And if we are not aware of things spiritually, you might say we are in spiritual ignorance, which Yogananda ji said is the greatest disease. So when we pick it up from that point, then we say that, okay, in this physical form, which is more like a vessel, an indicator of the level of prana, our spine, especially our brain and spine, one can say, "I'm not feeling very energetic today." Similarly, it happens that as one becomes little sensitive through yoga practice, or by impending death, one does often get a feeling that it's time for them to surrender the prana. Last month, a very dear friend of mine left his body in Pune, and he was about 65 years of age. Interestingly, over the years, I spoke to their family, met him many times, and he had a very difficult life. Very good, but very difficult from a health perspective. Every other day, hospital rounds, and very challenging. But sometimes it happens. We come with that kind of a karma. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just simply, what it is. It's more important to see what a person becomes through that, how their devotion especially develops. And this friend of ours was just, you might say, soaring in devotion to God. Now, that day when they came and they said, he's not well, we had to admit him in the hospital and such. As we were discussing his situation, and I know him to be a man and knew him to be a man of very strong willpower and such, I said, who knows? We are looking at the body and often discussing those things. Yes, we can start there. But I said, I don't know. Let's see if he's joyful, if he's calm. And they said, yes, he's become very withdrawn. He's become very quiet. He's not interacting with people. And later they would tell us the details that actually in the last 2 weeks he was mentioning that it's time for me to go. I think I want to go back to Krishna and such. Now, of course, it's not easy for the family to take that, but we have to understand what aspect of that dear soul was speaking of going. The body stays here, it is consigned to flames, but he wants to go to Krishna. He has come from Krishna, he's come from God, he needs to go back. So, to the degree we live in non attachment of our physical form, Yogananda ji said, to that degree, as the father of yoga, Patanjali, also said, our past lives are revealed to us at least on a feeling form. Our past experiences are revealed to us. Swami Kriyanandaji many times used to say, he said, I simply have no desire left to live. He said, it's like if I can serve people, if I can serve God and gurus, he says, that is the only thing that keeps me here. It's a motivation. I want to serve as an instrument just for that. And sure enough, God and gurus, from whom life comes, ego comes, prana comes. By the way, prana, ego, intelligence, Yogananda says these are aspects of our astral body. So these gifts are used by a wise person to channel those gifts of God further to other people. But once that work is done, what would one do over here is also a good question to ask. Basically, the answer is nothing. You've been there, done that, and you don't want to be here. So, with that understanding, and like I said, if one has practiced yoga, and Yoganandaji said through deep meditation, one is given the inner signal that your life work is now done. It's time for you to surrender that gift which was given to you, to multiply, to expand, to share with others. You have made good use of that gift. You have accomplished self realization, God realization, deep devotion through that. Now that prana needs to come back. Unhone pran tyag diya. And it does, if Yogananda ji one time said this, he said, why not understand what's happening? Let me read actually his exact lines over here. This is after he spoke of what death is, which I briefly read for you before. He says, why not learn the method by which you can switch off the life current from the entire body through conscious will by the steady practice of meditation, and thus free the soul from the bondage of death? Just as electricity does not die when a light bulb breaks, so our real self is not destroyed at death, but retires into the infinite omnipresent self. We experience this earth through the five senses of taste, touch, smell, hearing, and sight. Heaven is experienced through intuition. That is why it is necessary to meditate often and deeply, because in meditation you develop the sixth sense or intuition. We are not flesh, we are spirit. And he writes spirit over here with a capital S. There is a heaven awaiting you, and the only way to get there is by developing your intuition through intense prayer and meditation. Now, what keeps us from going into this, you might say, deep state of meditation, prayer, devotion, you might say even longing to be with the Lord? Because those who lived good lives, Yogananda said, it's like, again, remember those feelings, chitta as it is known, ahankar, chitta. It's basically the consciousness is mon, buddhi, ahankar, chitta. Yogananda said it descends that way in human beings. Those are, again, all four of them are aspects of the astral body. So it is natural for us to feel those qualities through the physical body. Oh, my feelings for a certain thing, a place, a person, a certain spiritual practice, food, all those things, we express them differently. However, Yogananda ji said that where should they primarily be directed? Not in things alone, where we just a momentary taste of it, a high and then unfortunately a low of it. He said it should primarily be given to God. When we understand where our near and dear ones, their body, causal, astral, physical, their feelings, their good, unique, individual characteristics. No two human beings are alive. So it is understandable that the person perhaps we may be missing today was unique, and absolutely they are. But where did the uniqueness of their nature also come, and where are they now? They are in God. Their qualities came from God. And Master would say, He deserves our first love. Like a saint once said, he said, if you love anything deeply enough, it will reveal its secrets to you. So, if we want to know where our near and dear ones are, is there a life after death? Have I lived before? What is really going on? Is this random or is there a reason behind it? Then we need to love these questions and allow our heart to ask these questions fearlessly. And like Master says, pray that way, express your devotion that way. And then in meditation, through intuition, through the books and writings and personal testimony of the masters, you and I will be given the guidance, which in our own time will become our own experience. I want to share another story at this point, friends, which again I've taken the permission of this dear friend and to share. 10 years ago, her father met with an accident. Karma really is very complex. Let me share actually one or two details of this story, which I normally don't. So, we all became friends on the spiritual path. They now stay, the whole family is a Kriyaban family. They stay in Thane, outside of Mumbai. And Jyoti, as her name is, her brother stays in Pune. He's a Kriyaban here. And Jyoti told me this story that for the last 10, 11 years now, she was not able to. She had this recurring thought that when her father passed away that many years ago in a road traffic accident, he had multiple fractures of the body, especially of the skull. He immediately was in coma. They got a call from the hospital because they found his identity and contacted the family, and they never got a chance to really interact with him, and he left his body a couple days after the accident. She always had multiple sorrows of not being with her father. Why did this have to happen? He must have been, especially she thought, in so much pain. Now, he came many times in dreams through relatives and others, and he said, I was not in pain, Jyoti. But she was not convinced. She actually said when he left his body, she was cooking in Thane that evening and she heard him cry very lovingly, call out, I should say, very lovingly, as he would call out when she was a young child, Jyoti. So she came out of the kitchen quite startled, and her husband said he heard him too. And their only child also came out of his room and he said, I heard grandfather calling out your name. They immediately called their brother in Pune, who also heard his father call out his name very lovingly. And by this time, they started getting nervous. What sort of an experience is this? And then, as I mentioned, the call from the hospital came. It is interesting, friends, that evening their father had gone to meet his best friend who was not doing well on the other side of town. And actually, he turned out to be the grandfather of one of our very core members also in Pune. Later, all these soul friends, you might say, would meet in the Sangha and get to know, tell us that, oh, our families have been friends since childhood. But look at the bond of love that continues lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. The families know each other, the grandparents were best friends, one friend is meeting the other. He unfortunately dies in a road traffic accident. He's trying to tell his family he was taken care of, he was fine, but she was not convinced. There are layers to these realities. And finally, when Jyoti took Kriya, few months ago, before Kriya, actually, she had this experience. She had never met Swami Kriyananda ji. And one day we had a satsang on understanding death. And she said after dinner, she was sitting on her couch at home. And she said, at arm's length, less than that, she said, this golden tunnel of light opened in front of her, and she said slightly above the horizon, and she looked in there and she saw the smiling face and torso of Swami Kriyananda ji in his blue robe. She said astral sparkling silver lights were beaming out of him from all sides. He was smiling, and he took her by the hand and he says, come Jyoti. And in that vision she went on the other side, and she said right behind him her parents were standing. In these 10, 11 years her mother had also left her body. They spoke, the parents and the child, and her father, after everything, he just said to her, he said, now remember, I want to let you know, I had no pain in spite of those fractures. And then Jyoti told us in one of the classes, now I know, I completely know. He had no pain. I'm so happy. She said, the sorrow of this whole decade has left me. That my father is with the masters. He's in a good place. He was in a good place when he left his body. There was no pain. In this very book, Yogananda ji writes, when a good soul dies by a fall, electrocution, road traffic accident, or even murder, he says they don't feel pain. It's very difficult for you and me to understand that. I'm speaking from a medical standpoint also, because if they're complaining, what of that? But again, I have to say this is beyond my understanding. We have to go by some of these experiences that our friends have shared and the masters share, and develop our own understanding and faith to experience this. Coming back to that subject, that if death is, if we live well and if we go to a wonderful place, if we are happy, as Yogananda said, the moment you're out of the body, or I should say, the body is not there, as he said, to contain you, your finer feelings, your love, your generous spirit. He says those qualities multiply exponentially by tens of thousands, sometimes millions. That should be very reassuring, because that is the level of joy the soul is feeling. That is why all these people coming back to tell their friends and relatives that they are in a good spot. I'll tell you another story very quickly, which was a complete stranger. This happened to one of my friends in Pune. He was in Mumbai one day. It was raining cats and dogs, and he's a healer. He prays for people just as a habit, you might say, all the time, often not charging for those things. And he's a healer by profession for many years, also a Kriyaban. He said, Aditya, I sat in an auto rickshaw, and in this voice compelled me from inside to tell this rickshaw driver that his son is okay. But he said, I thought, what an absurd thought. And he kept quiet. And again, this voice said, please let this person know his son is okay wherever he is. So my friend asked him, he said, I hope everything is okay in your family. And the person said, yes. He said, on the same note, I want to let you know, I pray for people. I'm getting this feeling, which I want to tell you, that your son wants you to know that he's well. And the man immediately stopped the rickshaw. He said, who are you? Why did you say that? When my friend explained that he had a message like that from his son. He said, "Please come with me to my home, which is in a slum." He said, "My son was in 10th grade and he left his body a week ago, 2 weeks ago." He said, "Today is the first day I'm driving the rickshaw after his passing." But he said, "I am still fine, but my wife is inconsolable." When they went back, and my friend he left all the work he was doing, he went with them to their house. He told his mother, and you know, friends, there were two friends of that boy who had passed away already sitting in the hut, who had also come. One of them had the dream. The boy said, "Please go and tell my mother I'm fine." I'm trying to share these stories with you to develop this understanding that there is a realm which most of us don't see, but it does completely exist. And if we do not know it, Yogananda ji said, why not improve our knowing? Now, what is it that keeps us, as I was asking, from going into deep prayer, devotion, meditation, and those states? Because you have to be relaxed, not passive relaxation of death, but in meditation, we want to be dynamically relaxed to receive intuitive feeling. Well, first of all, our heart has to be calm. We have to have fewer attachments. Like Patanjali said, if we have attachments, then we see those attachments, they become real for us, everything else becomes a blind spot. And quite importantly, we have to accept that we might be in a realm of duality where the role and rule of karma is quite predominant, and we need to at least slightly get beyond it. What is karma? Yogananda ji said, when you accept that everything has come from consciousness, he says the moment consciousness manifests itself on a thought level, energy level, ultimately on a physical level, he said the moment that happens, from that moment, it is an action and a reaction. I can tell you, as a doctor, when I used to conduct deliveries, the very first thing all of us do when we are born is we inhale, then we cry, and the last thing we all do, as Yogananda ji also confirmed, and as the doctors know, is there is a death rattle and we leave the breath, we leave the body through that outgoing breath. Well, that is karma, inhalation and exhalation. Our thoughts are karma, Yogananda ji said. So he says, when we accept, now it's not to say, oh my goodness, this is overwhelming. No, there is good karma, there is bad karma, there is neutral karma. But to not accept that it permeates every aspect of our lives is to ignore it. And like I said in the beginning, if we ignore it, how can we overcome it? Whereas Swami says, when we were creating karma over incarnations and incarnations and incarnations, he says, you and I were simply not aware. We were in ignorance. The power and the beauty of being aware is that you can become intentional. In his healing practices, Yogananda ji repeatedly used to say, now that you have known that there is a law and there is a way out, he said, if you apply your willingness and your will and your intention, he says the results will be at least 100 times better, which is to say, much, much better also is possible, because now we say, okay, now Lord, I know about this, and that energy and focus of our heart, of our mind, of getting to really know our near and dear ones and to pray for them, just like if they were in need anywhere in the world, would you not travel? Would you not send money? Would you not go and personally serve them? Similarly, wherever they are, this should wake us up to that reality that I want to know, so I can pray now with focus and awareness. And that acceptance of that law of karma, that karma is nothing but movement, it is action in the midst of which you and I have to make certain actions count more. When one action, let's say of prayer, of meditation, becomes more important than the others, you and I will start excelling in that. I want to touch on this subject of disease also. Of course, it's a vast subject, but Paramhans Yogananda ji simplified it. He says disease comes from two words, dis, ease. And again, make no mistakes. to say, oh, I have a healthy body, I am disease free. Maybe you are, and I pray everyone stay that way, but I'll speak for myself. By God's grace, I've had a healthy body. And at least 13, 14 years ago, before I came on the spiritual path, I was not at all in ease. I had no major physical disease, but I had, you might say, spiritual disease. Seeing suffering, death, dying, the seeming randomness of this world. I said, what's going on? Is this random? Is it all by chance, or is there some intelligence, some law, some creator of some law which can give us a yardstick by which to live our lives and thereby come out of these situations? So, going by that understanding, if we bring, you might say, ease, then we will slowly come out of disease. How do you bring ease? Well, if we are not exercising, and if exercise makes you feel good, exercise, because you will be in, your body will be, you'll say, ah, I'm feeling good. If you're not praying deeply enough and you pray sometime, then you say, that has brought me ease praying for others. If news is bringing you dis-ease, don't go there. Just get enough information so you can bring ease into that situation. And just like I've been sharing about, especially the spiritual domain, if we are in such dis-ease of where, what is death and what's on the other side, well, through following the thread that the gurus have given of their teachings on life and death, let us bring complete ease to that understanding that, oh, death is a doorway, it is a portal, but as Yogananda said, it's just like a little child gets frightened and starts weeping and missing his siblings and family and parents, even if they go in the other room. He said, when you grow up, you don't cry each time somebody goes in the other room. You just know each person is in their bedroom. Likewise, friends, in this vast creation of God, as Christ said, there are many rooms in my Father's mansion. We are all actually in a different room of our own consciousness. We will be in dis-ease till we unite our consciousness with God's. And that is all that we are trying to do over here. And for those who may not know, we can share these teachings with them. We can develop our own understanding and bring this message to others. And of course, like I said, in the subject of diseases itself, there is a book of how to achieve glowing health and vitality, and Yogananda talks of life and death in this book, and diet and fasting, which is also extremely relevant. We have to all start with the physical body, we cannot ignore it, but these are times to practice these things. Dr. Amar, my friend who has been working in a COVID ward for the last 1 year, he said this very interesting thing to me. He said, world over, people are speaking so much about the virus, the variants, the vaccine, and all of that is necessary information. Now, through research, people know COVID is affecting those whose lifestyle has unfortunately been poor by and large. Diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and many other illnesses. He said, if our schools and medical colleges and prominent personalities, even today, started telling people that this virus may stay with us, I think it may for 1 or 2 more years. Let's take a vow that we will change our lifestyle. We will become physically healthy in the next 3 months, 6 months. You would be doing yourself, and you will be stopping the pandemic in its own unique way by strengthening yourself and being disease free to the best of your ability. So, like Yogananda ji said, he said, my teachings are here. He said, I have come to change civilization itself. So, whether we pick it up from karma and reincarnation and understanding of death, or we pick it up from how to be disease free, or we pick it up from, I'll speak about Kriya Yoga, friends, in the third class now, because that is more relevant on attaining liberation, moksha, enlightenment, and how can we pray for the soul freedom of those who have gone before us. So I'll speak about Kriya Yoga in that class now. But I wanted to share these, and let me quickly see if there's something I didn't cover. I think those were the things for today. I would very much urge you to make a study of these two books. There are others I will recommend, but for now, these two books, that what is karma? And of course, we could go in more detail, but this is a little bit like, you might say, we are breaking the ice over here. We're breaking the ground for people to first of all understand this exists and there is a way out. There is complete clarity about what is death and what happens on the other side, but we need to start where we are. So I urge you to read this book, share these books with others. As you make a study of them, share this message with other people, and of course questions will come which we can take. This class series, we are here, we have brought this in the very first place to address the need. So if more is required, of course we will do much more. So with those few words, I want to end today's class, and I want to see very quickly if there are some questions which I may take for just a minute or two. Okay. So there's no question, which is fine. You can write to us at Pune at anandaindia.org. Also, please do go to our India website, anandaindia.org, and you will see there is a special COVID helpline over there, a page over there. You can write your questions, you can speak to somebody in the language of your preference, and we will be happy to bring more clarity to what we may have discussed and any unique experiences, fears, questions you may have. I'll just take this one question which seems to have come just now. How about guilt people feel not being able to take care? Well, Ritu, who's asked this question, all of us have gone through that, including Swami Kriyanandaji. He said once he came on the spiritual path in 1948, and he realized how much more is going on over here from so many incarnations. He asked himself this question, that I may not end up meeting all those people I may have hurt even in this lifetime. But he said, I can pray for them. Remember, you can help people on the physical plane and it has its unique place. However, you can help them on a thought level and the astral level, the feeling level. Swami Kriyananda used to suggest this. He said, pray to God every day or as often as you feel like for this person. And you say, Lord, fill their hearts with divine peace. He says, when divine peace comes into our heart, it is the soil in which other seeds of God's consciousness sprout. So you can, or in a unique situation that you may have been, you're trying to pray for that, or find somebody who's in that situation, help them in that way. And that's exactly karma. It's not like you have to go back in time to resolve a karma. Karma was an action which went in one way, or a word, or a feeling, or an energy. Well, the moment you put out an equal and opposite force, that karma is resolved. Trust me, wherever that person may be in this life, or now if they've moved ahead, they will be healed by that simple, sincere effort and prayer. These are the words and promises of Yoganandaji. I'm not adding over here. This is written in the book Karma and Reincarnation. How to prepare for death? Death is inevitable and unpredictable, so better we prepare. Yes, we should prepare. That those were the words I was reading, ma'am. That how Yogananda said through daily, like we don't have the image over here. Yogananda ji's guru's guru was Lahari Mahashaya, and he used to say, if you don't invite God in the summer of your life, how do you expect him to be there in the winter? Which is to say, God would be willing to come, but just like we invite guests, we have to invite him, we have to know him. So through meditation, through prayer, through developing our understanding, by calming the heart, calming the breath, it is possible to go beyond those two things, heart and breath, by our efforts, by God and Guru's grace, by devotion, by yoga practice. And as you know, when heart and breath stop, physically we say the person has died. In yoga, if it is an intentional stoppage, relaxed stoppage, we don't call it death. Actually, we call it deathlessness. One has entered a high yogic state of meditation, consciousness, and Yogananda used to say breathlessness. is deathlessness. So it is possible, but again, this will have to be covered, and maybe you can take meditation classes to learn more about that. Friends, I'll come back to questions another time. We've exceeded our limit, and I'll close today's class over here. Thank you very much for joining. Same time next week, we will see you. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will have these classes also in Hindi and Marathi soon. So we'll be sharing if you would like to share it further with your friends. God bless you and keep safe.